If you're over 60 and you feel that familiar mid-afternoon crash, the one where your energy simply falls off a cliff around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, where your thinking gets foggy, where you find yourself reaching for something sweet or a third cup of coffee, I want you to understand what is actually happening inside your body at that moment. Because it is not laziness. It is not aging. It is your blood sugar signaling a pattern that, if left unaddressed, will progressively damage your brain, your heart, your kidneys, and the quality of every single day you have left. Blood sugar dysregulation after 60 is not just a diabetes issue. It is the invisible thread connecting fatigue, cognitive decline, hormonal disruption, cardiovascular risk, and accelerated cellular aging. And the science is now telling us, with extraordinary clarity, that the 5 most common daily habits of adults over 60 are the very habits that drive this process, and that most people have no idea they're doing them. We are going to discuss insulin sensitivity, glycemic variability, mitochondrial glucose oxidation, cortisol-insulin crosstalk, and the advanced glycation end products that literally cross-link and stiffen your tissues at the molecular level. The research comes from Diabetes Care, the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, and Cell Metabolism, 3 of the most rigorous metabolic research publications in existence. Managing blood sugar is not about avoiding sugar. It is about understanding the biology of energy regulation and using that understanding to reclaim your vitality, one decision at a time. Why insulin sensitivity collapses after 60. After 60, skeletal muscle mass declines by approximately 1–2% per year in sedentary individuals, and because skeletal muscle is responsible for absorbing 70–80% of dietary glucose after a meal, the loss of muscle mass is one of the most powerful drivers of age-related insulin resistance. A landmark study published in Cell Metabolism 2021 demonstrated that age-related muscle loss, sarcopenia, produces a metabolic state that is functionally indistinguishable from early type 2 diabetes in terms of glucose clearance capacity, even in individuals who are not overweight and have no other metabolic risk factors. The researchers found that GLUT4 transporter density on muscle cell membranes, the molecular gateway through which glucose enters muscle cells, decreased by 35% between the ages of 55 and 75 in sedentary adults. A 10-minute walk within 30 minutes after eating is among the most evidence-supported metabolic interventions available without a prescription. A 2022 meta-analysis in sports medicine found that post-meal walking reduced 2-hour postprandial glucose by an average of 12% compared to seated rest, a magnitude of effect comparable to low-dose metformin in some patient populations. Think of your skeletal muscles as the primary storage tanks for glucose arriving in your bloodstream after a meal. The larger and more metabolically active those tanks are, the faster and more efficiently they drain the glucose spike from your blood. When muscle mass declines, the tanks shrink. The same meal that your body handled effortlessly at 40 now produces a blood sugar spike that lingers longer, stimulates more insulin, drives more fat storage, and produces more inflammatory byproducts. The tank size is the variable, and you can influence it. Every time blood sugar spikes and falls, glucose molecules bind non-enzymatically to proteins in your body, a process called glycation. Over time, these glycated proteins accumulate into advanced glycation end products, AGs, that stiffen arteries, cloud the lens of your eye, damage kidney filtration units, and impair neuronal signaling in the brain. A comprehensive review in Diabetes Care 2022 found that serum AG concentrations were independently associated with accelerated cognitive decline, arterial stiffness, diabetic nephropathy progression, and all-cause mortality in adults over 60, even after controlling for HbA1c, BMI, and cardiovascular risk factors. The researchers identified glycemic variability, the amplitude of the peaks and valleys, as a more powerful predictor of AG accumulation than average blood glucose alone. A consistent blood sugar with moderate peaks is less damaging than an erratic blood sugar with high spikes, even if the averages are identical. Foods cooked at high dry heat, grilled, fried, broiled, produce dietary AGs at dramatically higher rates than the same foods cooked in moist heat, steaming, poaching, slow cooking. A simple shift in cooking method for protein-heavy meals can reduce dietary AG intake by 30–50%, according to research from the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Researchers studying centenarians in Sardinia, a blue zone region with some of the highest concentrations of individuals over 100 in the world, noted a consistent culinary pattern: slow cooking, stewing, and the use of acidic marinades, wine, lemon, vinegar before cooking. These methods, which the communities practice for entirely cultural reasons, happen to be precisely those identified by modern food chemistry as the most effective at minimizing dietary AG formation. Ancient wisdom and molecular science arrived at the same kitchen. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, directly raises blood glucose by triggering gluconeogenesis in the liver. After 60, dysregulated cortisol rhythms, often driven by poor sleep quality and chronic low-grade stress, create a blood sugar pattern that persists through the night and elevates fasting glucose in the morning, independent of what you ate for dinner. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, 2023, found that adults over 60 with disrupted cortisol diurnal rhythms, specifically those who showed a blunted morning cortisol peak and elevated evening cortisol, had significantly higher fasting glucose, greater insulin resistance, and 40% higher visceral fat accumulation than age-matched controls with healthy cortisol patterns. The researchers identified poor slow-wave sleep as the primary driver of cortisol dysregulation in this age group, forming a self-reinforcing cycle. Poor sleep elevates cortisol. Cortisol elevates blood sugar. Elevated blood sugar disrupts sleep architecture. 2 evidence-supported interventions to recalibrate cortisol rhythm. 1 morning light exposure within 30 minutes of waking, 10 minutes of natural outdoor light sets the circadian pacemaker and anchors the cortisol awakening response, which is a biologically necessary hormonal event that should be sharp and well-defined. 2, a consistent sleep and wake time, even on weekends, which multiple studies have shown reduces cortisol variability and improves glycemic control in older adults within 2 to 3 weeks. Think of your blood sugar regulation as a symphony conducted by several hormones simultaneously: insulin, glucagon, cortisol, and growth hormone. When the conductor, your circadian rhythm, is well rested and performing on a reliable schedule, every instrument plays in time. When the conductor is fatigued, working irregular hours, performing under stress, the tempo breaks down. Individual instruments' hormones begin playing at the wrong moment. The music becomes noise. The blood sugar response becomes erratic. Fixing the conductor, fixing sleep and circadian alignment, is the foundational intervention without which all other dietary strategies are working against the tide. Dietary fiber, specifically soluble fiber, is one of the most clinically validated blood sugar stabilizers available. Yet surveys consistently show that adults over 60 consume less than 40% of the recommended daily fiber intake. The consequences compound silently over years. A 2023 systematic review in Nutrients analyzing 29 randomized controlled trials found that soluble fiber supplementation 10-15 grams per day reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of 9.4 milligrams/dl and HbA1c by 0.58%, clinically meaningful reductions that rival pharmaceutical interventions in mildly to moderately dysglycemic populations. The mechanism is mechanical. Soluble fiber forms a viscous gel in the small intestine that slows glucose absorption, blunts the postprandial spike, and feeds the gut bacteria species, particularly Bifidobacterium and Akkermansia, that produce short-chain fatty acids shown to directly improve insulin sensitivity in muscle and liver tissue. The 5 highest impact soluble fiber sources for blood sugar control in order of gram per serving yield: 1. Psyllium husk, 7 g per tablespoon; 2. Cooked oat groats, 4 g per cup; 3. Black beans, 5 g per half cup; 4. Flaxseed, 3 g per tablespoon; 5. Cooked lentils, 4 g per half cup. 1 tablespoon of psyllium husk in a glass of water before your highest carbohydrate meal of the day is one of the simplest and most evidence-supported glycemic control strategies available to seniors without a prescription. Prediabetes, defined as fasting glucose between 100 and 125 milligrams/dl or HbA1c between 5.7 and 6.4%, affects an estimated 38% of American adults over 65, and the majority are undiagnosed. More critically, the tissue damage associated with glycemic dysregulation begins years before the threshold for a diabetes diagnosis is crossed. The concept of normal on a standard fasting glucose test is a clinical threshold, not a biological guarantee of metabolic health. Continuous glucose monitoring studies in non-diabetic adults regularly reveal glycemic spikes and variability that would alarm any endocrinologist, driven entirely by meal composition, timing, stress, and sleep. Whole fruit consumption is associated with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes across multiple large epidemiological studies, including a 2013 analysis in the British Medical Journal of over 187,000 participants. The fiber matrix of whole fruit fundamentally changes the glycemic kinetics of fructose absorption, slowing it, distributing it, and preventing the spike that fruit juice or extracted fructose produces. Berries in particular have among the lowest glycemic indices of any carbohydrate-containing food. The anti-fruit advice conflates fruit juice with whole fruit, a distinction with massive metabolic consequences. Prolonged fasting or meal skipping in adults over 60, particularly without adequate protein intake, accelerates muscle protein catabolism, muscle breakdown for fuel, which further reduces the skeletal muscle mass responsible for glucose clearance. A 2024 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that older adults who skipped breakfast had significantly higher postprandial glucose spikes at subsequent meals, greater inflammatory markers, and worse glycemic variability profiles compared to those who consumed a high-protein breakfast. Strategic meal timing matters, but deprivation is not the same as discipline. Here is your 4-step blood sugar stabilization protocol, starting today. 1. Walk for 10 minutes within 30 minutes of finishing your largest meal. You do not need equipment, a gym, or a specific pace. You need movement. This single habit, consistently applied, is among the highest leverage glycemic interventions documented in clinical literature for older adults too. Add 1 tablespoon of psyllium husk to a full glass of water and drink it 10 minutes before your highest carbohydrate meal of the day. This creates a soluble fiber buffer in your small intestine that measurably blunts the subsequent glucose spike. 3. Set a consistent wake time and protect it 7 days a week. Your circadian cortisol rhythm is your metabolic conductor. Anchor it with light exposure and consistency, and your fasting glucose will begin to reflect that stability within 2 to 3 weeks. 4. Audit your cooking methods this week. For protein-heavy meals, chicken, fish, eggs, legumes, shift at least 2 meals from grilled or fried to steamed, poached, or slow-cooked. Reduce your dietary AG load without changing what you eat, only how you prepare it. What I want you to feel right now is not anxiety about your blood sugar. I want you to feel what the science actually justifies. Agency. The biology we discussed tonight is modifiable. The habits that drive blood sugar dysregulation are identifiable and reversible. And the 4 steps you have in your hands tonight require no prescription, no specialist referral, and no expensive intervention. You have lived long enough to know that small, consistent actions compound into outcomes that astonish people. Your metabolism is no different. I have one question for you in the comments. What time of day do you feel your energy drop the most? Morning, afternoon, or evening? Your answer will help me build the follow-up content that serves you best. If tonight gave you clarity, subscribe to BioBites. Share this with someone you love who deserves to reclaim their energy. And remember, your body is not betraying you. It is asking for the right information. Now you have it.